Imagine a world where entire films vanished into the static of forgotten broadcasts, where studios buried reels and television executives erased stories too strange or too dangerous for reruns. These weren't blockbusters you can stream today. They were fragile experiments, aired once, then lost to time. But what if the truth behind them still whispers in dusty archives? Let's uncover 12 sci-fi movies from the 60 seconds you've never streamed. The Terrornauts, 1967. When the Terrornauts debuted in Britain, it was supposed to be a low-budget but daring attempt at televised science fiction adventure. Imagine a group of radio astronomers suddenly whisked away to a strange asteroid base, forced to prove Earth's worth to unseen alien masters. The premise was bold: humanity judged in a cosmic courtroom, with extinction hanging in the balance. But here's the twist: audiences didn't embrace it. Critics scoffed at its cheap sets, flimsy alien costumes, and stilted dialogue. To some, it looked like little more than cardboard painted silver. Studio executives quickly grew nervous. While the story held chilling undertones about war, technology, and Earth's survival, the execution seemed laughable. Viewers were supposed to feel dread. Instead, they giggled. Behind the scenes, chaos brewed. The budget had been slashed mid-production, forcing the crew to recycle props from other failed projects. Some whispered that the producers tried to cut costs so drastically that the film's final act, an elaborate alien tribunal, was hacked down to a single dimly lit room. Cast members later admitted they felt embarrassed even as cameras rolled. The film aired on TV, then quietly disappeared. No VHS release followed. No DVD reissue. Unlike other campy 60 seconds oddities that gained cult followings, the Terrornauts slipped through the cracks. For decades, only fragments and fuzzy recordings circulated among collectors. And yet, something about its premise lingers. The idea of humanity on trial remains timeless, echoing through later shows like Star Trek: The Next Generation. It may have been mocked then, but in its disappearance lies a haunting legacy. A reminder that sometimes the most daring questions vanish before the world can appreciate them. Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, 1969. At first glance, this looked like a triumph. A British-American co-production, directed by Jerry Anderson, famous for Thunderbirds. The film promised a mind-bending story. Astronauts discover a mirror planet orbiting on the exact opposite side of the Sunday, a hidden Earth, unknown until then. Audiences in 1969 expected wonder. What they got was paranoia. The astronauts, landing on the doppelganger Earth, realize its reversed mirrors show text correctly. Vehicles drive on the wrong side. Even time itself seems inverted. And as the astronauts fight to prove their discovery, the film descends into bleak tragedy. Critics were unsettled. Some called it confusing, others too cerebral. Rumors swirled that censors disliked its undertones, a distrust of government secrecy, shadows of Cold War espionage, and the eerie suggestion that reality itself was unstable. Television airings were cut, scenes trimmed, and in some regions, it simply wasn't shown at all. Behind the scenes, Anderson clashed with producers. He wanted a thoughtful exploration of identity and perception. They wanted a thrilling space adventure to rival 2001, A Space Odyssey. The compromise pleased no one. Reviews labeled it too dark for children and too shallow for adults. The film aired only a handful of times on TV before fading. No official reissues kept it alive. It wasn't until decades later, with DVD collectors, that Journey to the Far Side of the Sun began resurfacing. Today, it's still largely forgotten, rarely discussed, rarely streamed. And yet, its imagery haunts. The mirrored Earth stands as a perfect metaphor for the 1,960 seconds, a time when reality itself felt doubled, uncertain, and terrifying. Watching it now feels like stepping into a dream the world tried to erase. The Power, 1968. When MGM adapted Frank M. Robinson's novel The Power, expectations soared. The story promised paranoia, betrayal, and invisible terror. Imagine a group of scientists discovering one among them has evolved a dangerous new psychic ability, the power to control thought itself. Audiences in 1968 were ready for thrills. Instead, they found something deeply unsettling. The film blurred lines between science fiction and horror, with eerie sequences of hallucinations, warped reality, and sudden deaths. Critics praised its ambition, but warned it might be too frightening for television audiences. Behind the curtains, MGM was divided. Some executives feared the story's undertones of distrust in authority would resonate too strongly with counterculture audiences. Others worried its surreal imagery, giant toy soldiers chasing a man, faces melting into shadows, was simply too bizarre for primetime TV. The result? Theatrical release was limited. Television airings were sporadic and heavily edited, cutting some of the more disturbing hallucination sequences. Many regions never saw the full version at all. Viewers who did catch it described it as haunting. Some said they couldn't sleep for days afterward. Others, confused by its surreal storytelling, dismissed it as nonsense. The film never found mainstream footing and quietly disappeared from television schedules by the 1,970 seconds. But here's the irony, its themes remain startlingly relevant. Who holds unseen power over our thoughts? What if manipulation is already happening without our awareness? In its lost status lies a chilling warning. The power became less a movie, more a whispered reminder. Fear isn't always in the monster you see, but in the control you can't. Quatermass and the Pit, 1967. In Britain, Quatermass and the Pit was hailed as one of the boldest sci-fi thrillers of its era. Based on Nigel Neal's BBC series, it centered on a mysterious discovery in the London Underground, a buried spacecraft, ancient and sinister. As scientists dig deeper, they uncover something terrifying, an alien influence that has shaped human evolution and still holds sway over mankind's darkest impulses. On paper, this was prestige television turned feature film. Hammer Film Productions, best known for gothic horror, elevated it into an eerie blend of science and the supernatural. But here's the twist. While British audiences embraced its intelligence, American television distributors balked. The film's suggestion that humanity's violent tendencies were engineered by aliens cut too close to real-world fears. Critics warned it might ignite debates about religion, free will, and even racial tensions. Behind the scenes, censorship headaches plagued its release abroad. Network censors in the US trimmed sequences of mass panic, firestorms, and ghostly apparitions. Others cut dialogue about humanity's alien origins, deeming it blasphemous. What aired on TV in the States was often a hollow version, stripped of the very themes that gave it power. Some viewers who caught it late at night on regional broadcasts swore the uncut print played once, then never again. Collectors whispered about reels locked away, perhaps even destroyed, to avoid further controversy. Unlike Hammer's horror classics, Quatermass and the Pit rarely resurfaced in syndication. Yet, its legacy endures. Today, scholars call it a masterpiece of paranoia and cultural critique. Its vision that humanity's worst violence might not be ours alone feels chillingly modern. To watch it now is to stare into a mirror, asking whether our darkest instincts were born in us or planted long ago. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961. When it premiered in 1961, The Day the Earth Caught Fire was hailed as a daring environmental sci-fi drama, decades ahead of its time. Imagine two nuclear tests, detonated simultaneously by rival superpowers, shifting Earth off its axis. The result? Catastrophic climate changes, freak weather, and a planet spiraling toward fiery doom. Audiences expecting another monster-filled apocalypse were stunned. Instead, the film offered realism newsroom debates, scientific predictions, and harrowing images of London choking in blistering heat waves. Its black and white cinematography, tinted orange for the climactic sequences, only deepened the sense of dread. But here's where controversy struck. Governments disliked its subtext. By suggesting that human recklessness and Cold War bravado could literally destroy the planet, the film was seen as dangerously political. Rumors spread that American networks refused to air it uncut, fearing it might feed anti-nuclear protests. In Britain, it aired rarely on television, often late at night, almost hidden from prime audiences. Behind the scenes, the cast struggled through heatwave effects, gigantic fans, water shortages, and a sense that the story hit too close to home. Some crew members even admitted feeling uneasy, as if the film predicted disasters to come. When television finally did show it, many scenes were cut for pacing, reducing its impact. As color TV dominated, The Day the Earth Caught Fire looked old-fashioned, and stations quietly dropped it. For decades, it was nearly impossible to find outside rare festival screenings. Yet today, its message resonates more than ever. Climate crisis, nuclear fear, and human arrogance. Its warnings feel prophetic. Watching it now, one can't help but feel a chill. The future it imagined isn't science fiction anymore. The Creation of the Humanoids, 1962. When The Creation of the Humanoids aired on television, many viewers didn't know what to make of it. this low-budget American film didn't rely on ray guns or monsters. Instead, it asked a haunting question. What happens when humanity nearly destroys itself, and survival depends on artificial beings? The story follows a post-nuclear society where humanoids, androids indistinguishable from humans, rebuild civilization. But paranoia grips the survivors. Can these machines be trusted, or are they quietly replacing mankind? The film unfolded like a philosophical play, filled with dialogue about identity, mortality, and the soul. Critics were divided. Some called it slow, others groundbreaking. But rumors swirled about why television networks hesitated to rebroadcast it. Its themes, machines as saviors, humans as obsolete, struck too close to debates about automation, civil rights, and social upheaval in the early 1960 seconds. Some even whispered it was banned in certain markets for being unsettling and unpatriotic. Behind the scenes, the production was equally troubled. Actors performed in stiff makeup, designed to blur human and machine, but the effect unnerved audiences more than intended. Test screenings reportedly left executives shaken, unsure if viewers were ready for such bleak reflections. The result? It vanished quickly after initial broadcasts. Unlike campy robot adventures, this one was too serious, too strange. VHS collectors in the 1980 seconds kept its flame alive, calling it a hidden masterpiece of speculative fiction. Today, it feels eerily prophetic. Questions of artificial intelligence, human identity, and the fear of being replaced echo louder than ever. Watching the creation of the humanoids now is like staring into a warning we ignored, a whisper from the past that tomorrow may belong not to us, but to what we create. The Mindbenders, 1963. When the Mindbenders appeared on screens in 1963, audiences expected a thriller. What they got was a haunting exploration of human psychology and control. The film followed a scientist experimenting with sensory deprivation tanks, only to discover how fragile the mind becomes when stripped of external reality. From the start, it unsettled viewers. The protagonist's descent into paranoia and altered perception mirrored Cold War anxieties about brainwashing and psychological warfare. Released just months after reports of government mind control programs leaked into the press, the film struck an eerie chord. But here's where the trouble began. Television programmers balked. The imagery of claustrophobic tanks, hallucinations, and identity collapse was deemed too disturbing for family audiences. Some claimed its parallels to actual government experiments, including whispered references to MK Ultra, made it a target for quiet suppression. In the US, broadcasts were rare and often edited down, removing its most harrowing sequences. Behind the scenes, tensions were just as severe. Director Basil Dearden clashed with censors over whether the film suggested science could strip away free will entirely. Cast members later admitted they didn't fully grasp the implications until watching the final cut. Critics praised it as daring, yet audiences seemed unsettled enough to keep it at arm's length. By the 1970 seconds, The Mindbenders was seldom seen. It became one of those films whispered about by insomniacs who swore they'd caught it once at 2 a.m., only for it to vanish from TV guides. Today, its message feels chillingly timeless. How much control do we really have over our thoughts, our choices, our sense of self? Watching The Mindbenders now feels less like entertainment, more like staring into an experiment that escaped the lab and left us wondering if we ever escaped with it. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. At first glance, Robinson Crusoe on Mars promised a family-friendly adventure. The title alone suggested a colorful romp, Daniel Defoe's survival classic transplanted to the Red Planet, and in its early scenes, audiences got just that, an astronaut marooned, building fires, purifying water, and learning to endure the Martian landscape. But soon, the film shifted into something darker. Crusoe discovers alien slavers, their ships streaking across the skies, hunting humanoid captives. The allegories to colonialism, oppression, and survival under tyranny were unmistakable. What began as pulp adventure grew into a haunting meditation on freedom. Here's the twist. Television stations hesitated. Some claimed the imagery of enslavement and rebellion was too heavy for Saturday afternoon matinees. Others worried it would spark uncomfortable political parallels during the civil rights era. In some regions, broadcasts cut entire segments, reducing the story to survival montages while erasing its deeper meaning. Behind the scenes, the film's ambitious production nearly collapsed. Real NASA consultants were brought in to ensure authenticity, but budget shortfalls forced shortcuts. Rumors spread that unfinished special effects shots were quietly destroyed after initial screenings. Critics at the time dismissed it as too slow for children, too fantastical for adults. As a result, Robinson Crusoe on Mars faded quickly. By the 1,970 seconds, it was nearly invisible on TV schedules, overshadowed by flashier sci-fi spectacles. Only die-hard collectors and late-night hosts kept its memory alive. Yet its legacy refuses to die. In its quiet way, it foreshadowed The Martian decades later. And its allegory, one man alone against hostile worlds and oppressive forces, remains as potent as ever. To see it today is to discover a lost classic that dared to say survival means more than living. It means resisting. Planet of the Vampires, 1965. When Planet of the Vampires first appeared in 1965, it seemed like just another Italian space adventure. But what director Mario Bava delivered was something altogether stranger. A gothic sci-fi nightmare drenched in mist, shadows, and paranoia. The story follows a rescue crew landing on a desolate planet, only to discover an unseen force that takes over their bodies one by one, turning friends into murderous husks. Audiences didn't quite know what to make of it. The eerie sets, fog-covered landscapes, and glowing alien tombs felt more like haunted castles than futuristic worlds. Critics sneered at its theatrical style, and television programmers hesitated. Some claimed it was too bleak, too suffocating an atmosphere for family audiences. In certain regions, broadcasts were trimmed of its most unsettling imagery, reducing the film to a hollow shell. Behind the scenes, Bava worked miracles with a shoestring budget. Using painted backdrops, mirrors, and colored gels, he created an alien landscape that looked otherworldly, despite being shot entirely on sound stages. Yet his artistry was lost on most mainstream viewers, who dismissed the film as confusing or overly stylized. As a result, Planet of the Vampires all but vanished from syndication in the 70s. It became a whispered title, seen by insomniacs during late-night airings but rarely discussed. Collectors later noted that its imagery, especially the sight of astronauts discovering a colossal alien skeleton, eerily foreshadowed scenes in Ridley Scott's Alien. Today, its influence is undeniable. What was once mocked as slow and strange is now hailed as visionary. Watching Planet of the Vampires now feels like uncovering a dream Hollywood tried to bury. A nightmare in space that was too haunting, too ahead of its time, to survive in primetime rotation. The Man Who Haunted Himself, 1969. At its release, The Man Who Haunted Himself baffled audiences. Was it science fiction, psychological thriller, supernatural mystery? The story followed Harold Pelham, a conservative London businessman who suffers a near-fatal car accident. Afterward, he discovers a double someone who looks exactly like him, taking over his life, making decisions he never would, and unraveling his carefully ordered world. Roger Moore, years before James Bond, delivered one of his most haunting performances. Critics praised his dual role, but television schedulers weren't so sure. The film's themes, identity fragmentation, loss of control, and the suggestion of alternate realities were considered too unsettling for primetime family audiences. Some even argued it resembled real-life anxieties about conformity, double lives, and fractured societies. Behind the scenes, production tension matched the film's chaos. Director Basil Dearden insisted it was a sci-fi parable disguised as a psychological drama. Studios wanted a conventional thriller. The clash resulted in a film that didn't fit into any easy category, which made television networks deeply uncomfortable. In the UK, it was rarely broadcast. In the US, it slipped almost entirely under the radar. Rumors circulated that censors disliked its ambiguous ending. Did Pelham die? Did he split into two? Or was he battling something far stranger than psychology? Without a tidy conclusion, it couldn't be slotted into neat programming blocks. Over the decades, the film nearly disappeared, overshadowed by Moore's later Bond fame. Only collectors and film historians revived interest, hailing it as a masterpiece of identity horror. Watching it today feels uncanny. The double life, the split self, the sense of being replaced. These themes resonate more strongly now than ever. The Man Who Haunted Himself is no mere thriller. It's a whisper that perhaps we all live with a shadow, waiting to take our place. Children of the Damned, 1964. Following the success of Village of the Damned, 1960, MGM produced a sequel, Children of the Damned. At first glance, it promised more of the same strange children with psychic powers, threatening the survival of humankind. But instead of repeating the formula, it dared to go further. This time, 6 children from around the world appear, each gifted, each feared. Governments panic, labeling them threats, rounding them up like weapons of mass destruction. Yet the children themselves are portrayed not as villains, but victims, gentle beings persecuted by fearful adults. The film shifted the moral compass, daring to suggest that perhaps the true danger wasn't the children at all, but mankind's paranoia. Television networks bristled. The allegory was obvious: fear of the unknown, persecution of outsiders, and the global race to control power. Some argued it paralleled real-world tensions about minorities, Cold War hostilities, and even nuclear brinksmanship. Certain scenes, children being cornered by armed soldiers, were reportedly trimmed for TV airings, blunting its message. Behind the scenes, MGM executives clashed with director Anton Leder. They wanted spectacle, he wanted allegory. The compromise pleased no one. Critics praised its intelligence but noted its bleakness. For television, that bleakness proved fatal. Family audiences were not supposed to see innocent children portrayed as victims of adult cruelty. As a result, Children of the Damned rarely appeared on syndication schedules. In some regions, it vanished entirely. For decades, it lived only in whispers, dismissed as that strange sequel, unworthy of repeat broadcasts. But here's the twist. Today, it feels more relevant than its predecessor. Its commentary on fear-driven persecution speaks louder than ever. Watching it now is like staring at a mirror of society's darkest impulses, proof that sometimes the real monsters are not the children, but the adults who fear them. Seconds, 1966. At the top of our list sits Seconds, a film so disturbing, so ahead of its time, that it nearly destroyed its own reputation. Directed by John Frankenheimer, it told the story of Arthur Hamilton, a middle-aged man dissatisfied with his life, who undergoes a secret medical procedure to become young again, reborn with a new identity. He becomes Tony Wilson, played by Rock Hudson. At first, it seems a dream. Youth, freedom, a second chance. But soon, the truth emerges. The company that provides this service demands total control. When Wilson resists, he discovers the horrifying cost rebellion means death, and his body will simply be recycled into another second. Critics in 1966 were shaken. The film's grim commentary on identity, consumerism, and conformity was unlike anything else. But audiences expecting a glamorous Rock Hudson picture recoiled at his bleakest, most unsettling role. Television networks were even less forgiving. The imagery of surgical transformation, body disposal, and existential despair was deemed too horrifying for broadcast. Behind the scenes, the production itself was fraught. Frankenheimer clashed with Paramount executives who feared the film would tank Hudson's career. Hudson, secretly struggling with personal demons, poured himself into the role, producing one of his finest performances. Yet, reviews were savage. Audiences avoided it. By the time TV programmers considered it, they decided it was too bleak, too strange, too dangerous for living rooms. For years, Seconds virtually vanished. Only film schools and late-night cinephiles rediscovered it, praising it as a lost masterpiece. Today, it stands as one of the greatest and darkest science fiction films ever made. Watching it feels like looking into a nightmare of identity and control, one that still whispers a question no one wants to answer. If offered a new life, would you take it knowing the cost? These 12 lost sci-fi films weren't forgotten by accident. They were too daring, too strange, or too dangerous for the safety of television. Yet, in their disappearance, they remind us how fragile stories can be, and how easily truth vanishes into static. Which of these films haunts you most? Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below.